All right, hello. Yes, so you're probably wondering, it's been a while. And it has. I have not uploaded in a long time, and I apologize for that. I just kind of lost the passion to upload. Um, College started, so I've kind of been busy with that. And then COVID happened, which probably isn't really an excuse. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Um, I was in my room a lot. I just didn't record. So here I am, back. Not gameplay this time. One of the things I did before I quit YouTube a few years ago was I did the conflict roundup. I don't know what I'm going to call it, but kind of just going off on that. The whole point of this video series is just kind of giving you guys some more information on conflicts going around the world that are kind of recent, current news that you might not know a lot about. So that's what I'm here for. Well, without further ado, we'll just kind of get into the video. I don't want to spend too much time intro and talking about excuses why I didn't do this or that, blah, blah, blah. So we're first going to talk about Syria. I'm just going to move my notepad to my other screen. But so Syria, obviously, it's been 2011. It's been 10 years, over 10 years now of conflict, ever since the Arab Spring. And the Arab Spring, if you didn't know, at least in Syria's case, it started in this region called Dara. Now, what happened recently is that a few years back, to end the fighting here, the Syrian government with the Russians made a deal with the rebels here that they would not go into these neighborhoods and they would not continue fighting them as long as they continued to at least stop occupying places, allowing checkpoints on the outer cities, and kind of giving them more autonomy. They could keep guns, but not like heavy weaponry. And yeah, that was the negotiated deal. And then obviously, the reason we're focusing it on it in 2021 is because the Iranians decided they didn't really like that. They felt like it kind of helped Israel, didn't allow them to really have their troops, the Hezbollah and Iraqi affiliated troops from Iran, kind of able to be on the border region of the Golan Heights. So they decided to break that agreement, and they moved into some of the cities, set up more checkpoints. This pissed off the rebels. The rebels kind of rose up again. They call it the second Syrian spring, even though it's summer, and I don't think it's going to really last, but we'll see what happens. So these areas in red, kind of in green, were areas of recent that kind of rose up and took a stand against the Syrian government, which was unheard of at the time, considering the Syrian government's been on the front foot and they only don't control like this little region, obviously the SDF. But so yeah, they rose up, they took cities, they took out checkpoints, and they've been doing some damage. They reached the border with Jordan, which was the first time since 2017, I heard. So that was definitely interesting to see, and we'll remain to see what the lasting impact is. Obviously, I don't think they're going to last too well, especially if the Russian or the Iranians get more involved. Right now, it's just the Syrian government's local military force that's been going in trying to reestablish control. So we'll see what happens there. I have this article. The Syrian government has been stepping up. Obviously, quarter of Dara suffered a blow. And they did capture a lot of troops. Most have been released by now. They captured tanks. Obviously, they're going to keep those. They took the Damascus-Dara highway, which was a big point that connects Jordan with Syria. Russia's brokered deals in the past. That's how it happened in the first place. And the worries obviously are that this could create a bigger conflict. Could incentivize the rebels to rise up again in different areas and kind of take a stand against the Syrian government. But it remains to be seen, like I said, if this little uprising in Dara will do anything. So we'll see. The next one is obviously the most important one that people got their heads pointed at, especially in the online intel community. The Iranian drone strike on a oil tanker. Now, this oil tanker is, I believe, oh God, don't quote me on this, but it is Panamanian or something like that, owned by a British company, and that British company's head is an Israeli. So a very loose connection to Israel. That didn't stop Iran, though. They had this very sophisticated drone tactic they used to discover this tanker, and they sent a warning drone that kind of like indicated the location. They landed there, sent off flares to notify the other drones. They sent a second drone that destroyed or that landed and exploded in the passenger compartment, killing 2 people. One a British national and the other is a Romanian, I believe. Yes, 2 people killed, one Romanian national, one British. And this pissed off a lot of people. Not only did it piss off Israel, but it also pissed off the UK and the US. So much so that they both directly accused Iran of being responsible. Now, that's a big for many reasons. One, it's very rare that they blame Iran directly for issues like this. Most of the time, they blame the proxies that they have in Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, etc. Another is that for sure we will see a direct strike from Israel somewhere. They've already been doing strikes in Syria in many places. Uh, they may have done one in Iraq. They say there's one in Iraq every month, so you never know if that's true. But we could see a direct strike in Iran. We could see a boat being hit, the boat that would launch the drones in the first place. We could see a port being hit in Iran. There's many things that could be happening. And according to reports, at least from Jason Bertesky, Israel has received green light from the US and the UK for military action against Iran, targeting Iranian port, Iranian military ship, or Iranian ship with UAVs. Now, this could be a false report, but the US and UK blaming Iran was a big deal. So, oh, here it is. The ship was owned by a Japanese company. It was managed by an Israeli-owned Zodiac Maritime. That's a British company, Japanese company. There's a loose connection to Israel, obviously. So we'll see what happens here. I'm definitely going to make an update video whenever the response happens. It would be surprising if I see the US or the UK directly doing anything other than allowing Israel free hand to do whatever the hell they want. But I could be wrong. I don't think the UK personally would be interested in starting a global conflict. And I think they'd just be much more happy with Israel taking the hand. You know, the one area I could be wrong, like I said, was a British national was killed by them. So that could change things. You know, this did happen last year where a British contractor was killed by the Iraqi based Iran militias. That didn't really do much. British were pissed off, but they didn't do anything. This time it's different. If Iran was directly responsible, maybe the UK does something. We'll see. The US, maybe not, just because they aren't that involved in this, but they have not good relations with Iran since the last administration. So we'll see what happens there. But other than that, that's Iran. Another thing with Iran, just a quick notice, is there's been a lot of protests in the country against the leadership. This is due to a water shortage, issues involving the economy. People are in poverty. Iran's not doing well itself. So kind of doing this big national prestige hit on another country might, make people a little more happy. We'll see what happens with that. I'll be following the Iran protests very closely and seeing what happens. I don't see much changing there. Most protests nowadays don't really lead to change, as we've seen in the Arab Spring, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. The list goes on. They don't really lead to change. Now, another thing that a lot of people in the U.S. have been focusing on is the rise of the Taliban, or re-rise of the Taliban in Afghanistan. If we look here, I love Live UA Map, by the way, not sponsored, but they are a great service to use for people who like following mapping and all that. The Taliban has been gaining ground in many areas. Three key cities they're attacking right now. Kandahar, obviously in southern Afghanistan. Lash, forgive me for my pronunciation. Lashkar another city down here. And then this is Herat, a city in the north. So these three key cities are under siege right now by the Taliban. They have a pretty sizable population, but it'll be interesting to see if anything comes out of this. I don't expect the cities to fall that easily, but Lashkar is the capital of the Helmand province, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's just a quick update. The U.S. is obviously withdrawing. They're out. They're not going to be involved in Afghanistan other than to provide support, train the troops, maybe some airstrikes here and there. So we'll see what happens in Afghanistan. I don't think Afghanistan is going to fall as fast as people think it is. It's a military that doesn't really want to fight, so kind of got to get the morale up. There's not really a way to do that if you lose three of your biggest cities besides your capital. But I'll be following Afghanistan. That's one that's constantly changing. It's not like a short conflict that just spares up and then nothing happens like some of these protest movements. The conflict in Afghanistan obviously been going since 2000. Before that, I guess you could go all the way back to the Soviet Union versus the Mujahideen. But, Afghanistan's always been a war zone area. There's not really a stable time and period people can point to. But I'll be following it. I'm interested to see what happens with that. The next conflict I wanted to talk to was about Lebanon. This is one that's been severely underreported. I think it could blow up. So there was a murder yesterday in Lebanon, and it has sparked outcry, not only from the Hezbollah area, but also the Lebanese military. So I'm just going to review this thread that I found that kind of does good justice following this story in Lebanon so you can get a more clear picture. So about a year ago, a Hezbollah operative murdered a teenager by shooting in the chest in front of his mother. Obviously, I'm not going to show that. That's very gross. Now his brother retaliated by ambushing and murdering a Hezbollah person at a wedding. So, this kind of inter-family violence. But in this case, it kind of blew up more than people expected. The murder happens. A Hezbollah person gets killed. Hezbollah, obviously, terrorist organization to many countries, but not necessarily by others. So we'll see, if other countries are going to have to say something about Hezbollah being involved in this violence. This is just a recap from last year. This guy who got killed was very involved with Hezbollah. He has served time in Syria, helping out the Assad regime. In the aftermath, Hezbollah organized an invasion to this guy's neighborhood that killed the Hezbollah member. And when the Hezbollah caravan arrived, they proceeded to provoke gunmen from his Sunni clan. So Shia, Sunni, it's that kind of Arab violence that you would see. Hezbollah clan was armed, and then that kind of blew up even more. Eventually, you could see participants were moving around his house. They were trying to entice him, antagonize him. This eventually got the military involved because, Hezbollah is running around trying to incentivize a gang war of sorts, or at least a family clash. The Sunni Arab clansmen fought with Hezbollah. Now the military is involved. The military is very corrupt in Lebanon, and they have a hard time dealing with Hezbollah because Hezbollah is a recognized political party. In the militant wing, you can't really mess with them too much, because then you might piss off Iran, who provides a lot of support. You might piss off Syria, who shares a huge border with. And you might also piss off the Palestinians, that has a huge refugee community in Lebanon. So the Lebanese government really has a hard time dealing with Hezbollah, because there's not really a good way to in the state they're in. So the military is involved. More clashes break out. Obviously, they don't care about the military, like I said. And this kind of wraps up that Hezbollah operatives were actually killed. The military was ordered to shoot anyone who's armed, and that's what happened. So this happened this morning as of August 1st, and I will be following this to see if there's any update by the next video. If there's not any updates, I probably won't say anything. So we'll go to Tunisia next. There was what many people would call a coup. The president basically sacked the prime minister and suspended parliament, the military kind of taking direct control. The problem with Tunisia is, people are like using that as the stable democracy of the Arab Spring. It wasn't. One of the parties, the Ennahda, or however you pronounce the party, was, always kind of, they're basically the Muslim Brotherhood party. So if you don't know what the Muslim Brotherhood is, it's hard for me to explain. But basically, they're like an Islamist, hardcore, radical group that wants, more Islamic style life. You could associate with like maybe Pakistan. Not really. I guess Iran. Iran's pretty Islamic. I think it's called the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyways, Tunisia had a result of the Arab Spring. The dictator gone. They had elections. The Ennahda party was one of the parties, which pissed off some of the more people who are in favor of reforms. But when he claimed, there was basically a coup of sorts, because the president didn't want to deal with the Ennahda party anymore. It didn't have to do with their Islamist side, I believe. It had to do more so with the fact of the prime minister disagreeing on many things. So that's that. As of this morning, people are calling it a coup. It's too early to say. I would agree with this person. The president is one of the most popular people, so him sacking the prime minister was very in favor by many of the people. But I think that people are kind of assuming it's a coup just because he got rid of the prime minister, which I think he technically can under the Constitution of Tunisia. Don't quote me on that, but we'll see. As of this morning, though, Tunisia's parliamentary speaker, the one who was sacked, was in the hospital. I believe he's leaving the hospital now, so he's all good. This is the leader of the Ennahda party, by the way, so I don't know. I guess this will be important to follow. There's a lot of reports that different Arab countries are involved, that Egypt is helping out the president. Algeria's pissed off because they want that Tunisia to be in their sphere of influence, and that they were pretty big fans of the Ennahda party. Libya, obviously, on their doorstep, is not a stable country by any metric. So we'll see. And then our last, but one of our most important, is one that just fought a war, one of the most recent wars in, I guess, the 21st century, was the Second Karabakh War. Azerbaijan obviously taking back a lot of their territory. Unfortunately, the war did result in many casualties. So there's still some Karabakh left, but the war did result in not only this, but also many border disputes, because they technically don't have a really demarcated border. A lot of this is from Soviet times. And when the Soviets collapsed, it was kind of like an understanding on the border, but it didn't really make too much sense at the time. So as of recent, after Azerbaijan kind of made their stand, got rid of Karabakh, not got rid of, but at least downsized them by quite a bit. They have moved to move in a little bit on Armenian territory. They've taken all of what they call Lake Sev, which is this lake, and they've moved deeper in this area. They've been moving a lot in the north. That in July of last year, so before the Second Karabakh War, this was a big. They were constantly fighting in this area, and there was a short kind of, I guess not war, but skirmish here that resulted in many dead. It was kind of a precursor to the Second Karabakh War. But for once, the conflict is not only involving these areas, but also what their autonomous region is here, the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, I believe it's called. I'd probably butcher the spelling, but yeah. So there's been a lot of infighting here on this area. I don't know what's going to result out of it. Obviously, the peace deal involved Russia being involved in sending peacekeepers, not only here, but also the Armenian-Azerbaijan border. For right now, until there's a border agreement, I feel like they're just going to keep fighting because no one really knows whose land. The maps are kind of iffy to both sides, I guess. And not only that, there's the fact that there's also these enclaves and exclaves in either country that makes the border kind of an issue because either side really controls their own enclave or exclave. So those are just points on a map basically that say, hey, those were our exclaves, we want them back. But I mean, there's no way to take them back. And even if they did get them back, there'd be no way to access them. They'd just be surrounded. So if there was a third war, which maybe someday there will be, it would be kind of useless to hold on to those and they'd just get instantly taken. So, but this area is one of the key areas where the fighting is. Also the Lake Sev area. Kaplan might see some fighting. The big issue with Armenia is that one of their key roads going here through here into Kapan is what the M17 highway that could easily be cut off just by Azerbaijan walking a few feet. So they might have to build a new road. Taking this juncture would cut off this entire road. I guess it's hard to explain if you don't know, but basically Armenia envisioned that they would never have to worry about this area falling back into Azerbaijan hands because they won the first Karabakh War and all this territory used to be a Karabakh Republic. So they built their highways knowing that they didn't have to worry about their border. Now they do, which kind of screws over their entire highway system. And a lot of the mountainous terrain is now in the hands of Azerbaijan, where they can just look down and see these cities like Goris, like Kapan, maybe not Vardanis because that's kind of far, but my point, you see my point. So this is something that I'll probably have been following the most closely just because I was constantly involved in the Second Karabakh War. Some of my Discord communities where we were kind of talking about it and mapping out like each day what Azerbaijan said they took, what they lost, what Armenia claims they destroyed, like tanks, drones, etc. So we'll see. This has been one of my favorite areas to cover just because it's so interesting to follow, and the history is just so rich that you really get an idea of what's going on, and you really do learn a lot. So, anyways, hope you guys like all this. Hopefully next time I don't have to record a Zoom. I'm on my laptop, so I didn't really have the ability to, do as much as I did with my old computer, which I guess this comes with the college. So thank you all for watching. I hope that some people still watch my videos, even though it's been a few years. And if you could, like, comment, subscribe. Also turn on notifications. I'm going to try to do these videos more. I might do a podcast or two, and I might do some gaming, but probably not, just because it's hard to do on the laptop. And yeah. Anyways, see you guys.